Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Kiv, your favorite degenerate, and today I thought that I would go through some of the settings for Halo Infinite's multiplayer because we all want to do as good as we possibly can, so having some good settings to help you do better in multiplayer really does go a long way. So let's go through each of these one step at a time. Starting off with the general settings for your controller, you've got your button layouts. Some of you may not know this, but you can actually, even for a controller, individually map each button to whatever you want. With these auto clambers and step jumps, I turn those off. You want to have complete control of when you climb over something and when you don't. Sometimes you may be behind cover, and if you're trying to jump up to get a good shot on someone, you may end up climbing over the cover that's protecting you and you expose yourself a bit more. Now, going on to sensitivity and acceleration, this stuff is really important because pretty much this is one of the main things that affects your aim. So acceleration and sensitivity, I reckon you should bump up just a tiny bit. Acceleration, you don't want to max that out, because that is really difficult to get used to, and with the game being fresh out, you want something that's easier to learn. Sensitivity you can get used to, acceleration is really difficult to get used to, so I would not recommend that. Just a tiny bit, bump that up to make that feel a little bit more responsive, and that way you can turn around a bit faster too. Now, your dead zones and your input thresholds, you always want to pump those down to 0. Even though the little arrow makes you think as if a higher value is normal, it's not. That's not good. Like, it's literally in the name. It's the threshold of how much movement you're gonna have to do before you get a response in your actual in-game aiming. So if you want something that's more responsive and something that's actually going to respond to what you're doing on your controller or your mouse, then you want to pump that number down to 0. The other thing is it actually says it in the description for your center dead zone that a lower value feels more responsive. So I recommend that you drop those down to 0. And axial dead zone, I don't know why, but I found that in the flighting, just pumping it down a little bit felt a lot better, and I honestly can't give you an explanation for why. The rest of the buttons, you can just slot whatever you want for it. Even on a controller, you don't have to go off of a set layout. You can do whatever you want, which is really cool and good to see. Now, going on to the video settings. Field of view, I feel as if 120 is just a bit too much and can be a bit disorientating. I usually have mine sitting at about 110, that way you have a wider view of everything going around. When it comes to blur and screen shake, have them both on 0. They are just there for cinematic purposes. If you want everything to look dramatic and stuff, then sure, but if you care about the gameplay and having a smooth, playable experience that you can easily work with, then yeah, put them right down to 0. With exposure and full screen effects, it doesn't look as if these have a big impact on your gameplay, because the exposure is just the brightness of explosions, and the full screen effects is just how much something like your shield recharging is going to be visible. So I turn them down a little bit just to help make sure that, I can focus on enemies and what else is going on around me, and not the special effects. Speed lines is purely optional. I like to keep them there because I think it looks cool, and then I also just bump up the sharpness a little bit so that way all of what I'm seeing is a bit clearer and a bit more crisper on the edges. So I really do like that. Audio, look, everyone has a different headset or speakers. I can't really speak for each different personal thing that you have, so that's something that you can figure out if you're concerned about. The default settings seem to work pretty well for me, and I've got a pair of Astro A40s, so pretty decent audio experience all the way around. UI, I don't really change anything. Even the coloring, like over here is what you can change for your enemy, friendly, and fire team colors. Some people do change them, but honestly, I don't really touch them. Whatever color you do change it to, I recommend that you have a clear color that doesn't really fit in with any of the other maps, so that way you can very clearly see the outlines on enemies. Like, do not put it as like a darker color, have it something that's brighter and pretty obvious to tell from the background. Then you can also play around with whether you want to see friendly or enemy names. I don't feel as if this makes a big impact to the gameplay because you do have the Halo Infinite friend or foe tag system, so I think that it doesn't have a huge effect. Lastly, these visual effects only apply to the HUD, so if you untick bloom, you won't be able to see your reticle as it gets bigger, which is not good. You want to be able to gauge that, because you cannot just turn bloom off for yourself. That's that's hacks. So yeah, make sure that you can still visually see that, so that you can manage it and make sure that your shots are accurate. The rest of these other ones just below that, the observer interface and all of that junk, you don't really need to play around with. You can also change your weapon offset, so that will affect how much space it takes up on your screen. You can drag it a bit more to the left, right, up and down, and also depth-wise as well. So that can help you out if you're concerned about your weapon taking up too much space on your screen. And last of all, you can also change your HUD visibility through the accessibility options. It is something that's up to you as well, on how clear you want everything to be. The rest of it is all just a rehash of previous settings that you have already been through. So that just about does it for all of the settings that you can customize in Halo Infinite multiplayer, and what I think would be best for most people. So let me know what you all think about all of this in the comment section down below, and if you have some different settings, let me know what's worked best for you. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so we can hit 1K before Halo Infinite's campaign releases. But anyway, I've been Kiv, and I'll see you all on the next one.